All right, I have here two 10 gauge wires. You might be able to see that one is a bit thicker than the other one. The thinner one is somewhat bendable. It's not, or somewhat flexible. It's not super stiff, but this thicker one is a lot more flexible. So this one here has a low strand count. So those wires inside are thicker and fewer. The thicker ones make it a bit more stiff. This one has many more strands inside, so they're thinner and more. And plus this silicone casing makes it more flexible. So one of the more difficult things with the flexible ones though is that they do this over time, which makes them more difficult to manage, more difficult to crimp in these, and to poke into those, but it is doable. By comparison, here is some 12 gauge wire, which is a bit thinner than the 10 gauge. This is what we used last year. This is actually called wet noodle. It's very, very flexible. But again, you can see how it gets very frayed over time. This, on the other hand, is not wet noodle. It's a very stiff wire, very stiff. But it keeps its shape. It's a bit easier to fit into things and to crimp. But as you can see, all of them we've been able to get power pole connectors on, so it's doable. I'm going to walk you through that. Okay, so we will start with the easier one. So this is the lower strand count, less flexible wire. Grab your favorite wire stripper. First we need to strip the wires. You can use whichever one is more comfortable for you. If you like this one, that's fine. Just make sure that you pick the right slot for the wire. My preference is this one because it doesn't matter what the thickness of the wire is. You just strip it like that. So you want a length that's not too long, not too short. You basically want it to fit right inside that slot. See, sorry, I'm not in the camera there. Fit inside that slot without going too far and without coming down. In fact, I stripped off probably a little bit too much off of that, but it should be okay. You want to then twist it, get the strands nice and compacted down. I'm going to set that aside for a moment. Now, this is the trick that I do. You want this to be as easy as possible to get that wire in there. This is a PP45, so it goes in the 45 slot. Now, quite frankly, I'm not sure what's the correct orientation in here because there is a slight difference, but what I do is I put it in there until it lines up on the back, and then bring this one click down. One click. Doing it very carefully so it just gets one click, and that way it's held in there. I'm not holding this closed, it's holding itself closed. It's holding that PP45 connector in there. So then I'm going to feed this wire in there carefully. And sometimes it helps if you set it in there and then twist with the direction that you twisted the wires until it goes in there. I'm pushing it until I'm going to try to push it until the casing runs right up against that connector. Bear with me. Did you pause? You did. Okay. So then I'm going to hold that in there. It's a little awkward coming in from this direction because I'm right-handed, but if you're left-handed, it might be easier. So then just start crimping it. And you're going to squeeze all the way until it clicks to free itself like that. Now you notice this is kind of stuck in there. We very frequently have this problem. So what I do is grab a screwdriver. This particular screwdriver has a shaft all the way through the handle, so if you hit the handle with a hammer, you're not going to break it. And I set this right against, as far down as I can, right next to the crimper teeth. And I give it just a quick little, get a grammar here, quick little tap. And it didn't come out, so I'll do it again. Tap. And that should have mostly knocked it out of there. In fact, it didn't. That one bent. That is part of the problem with these crimper jaws. So I'm going to try the other side. Going to tap, tap, and hopefully that came out. There we go. So that came out. I do see I've got some strands that strayed out of the crimp. Now, I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm not sure if this is totally okay to do, but I'm going to snip those off because those could become a problem in creating shorts later. Now, this connector got a little bent whenever I pulled it out of there, so I'm just going to gently bend it back just a little bit. In fact, it's pretty stiff, so it might be okay as it is. Okay, so then I'm going to find the correct orientation in this connector. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see that, but the silver part, the connector metal, it needs to be oriented like this. So this bump is going to come over the top. So you'll see this better in person, but I'm going to just push it in there until it slides in. And that one actually went all the way in by itself. You'll feel a small click whenever it's in place. So this now is in there completely by itself. Oh, no, not quite. So I'm going to try to just do this by hand, push it in until I hear that click. And it's not going. No, there it goes. Okay, so now it's in there. You do a tug test, and that seems to be on there. So now we've got a good power pole connector on there. All right, we're going to do the thicker cable next. All right, this is actually attempt number 2 on this wire. So I think what happened was our crimp was still too long, so I'm going to shorten it again. Okay, that looks really short, but I think it'll work better with these connectors. Let me check. Yeah, actually it's almost perfect. So if you can see how little I actually stripped off that wire just by comparison. There's the connector. That's how much I stripped off. Okay, so I'm going to set this in the crimper, but I'm not going to click it closed the once because I've determined that the thickness of this wire is just too much to fit in. So if I crimp it a little bit, so I'm going to just set it in the crimper, hold it with my hand, drop that in there carefully, get it as far down as I can close to the casing, and start the crimp. Go ahead and finish the crimp. And we're going to have to knock it out of there again. These crimpers they've about had it. They need new teeth, but that's all we got now. It did get bent again. Bend it back a bit. Okay, we'll try again. We'll try to put it into the housing, get it aligned, try to push it in by hand. Feeling much better, yeah, much better. Still pretty difficult because that is a thick wire. It is almost on there. Use a small screwdriver to try to get it the rest of the way. I have not heard that click, so I don't trust that it's actually in there. Still haven't heard the click, and it doesn't. It's really hard to see. I would not be able to get that on camera, but it's really hard to see because you can tell that the metal piece that's in the casing needs to have popped up under the lip. So basically, you've got a piece in there that, imagine it's the flat side of the screwdriver, that this is going to go over that lip, and so that's the click that you hear, and I just haven't gotten that yet here. So I'm going to keep trying until I hear that click. If you don't do that, your cable can either come out or the connectors won't connect properly. So like, for example, got an existing one here that these look good. I'm going to snap this on here. It kind of goes, it might be a little loose. All right, try one more time. A different tool. There we go, and it clicked. You can usually feel it and hear it, and that clicked in there nice. So there we go. 2 10-gauge wires and Powerpole connectors. Okay, with that last one, I actually stripped off a little too much of the casing for what I wanted to do, so I'm going to set my stripper just a little bit shorter. Okay, so I'm going to strip the cable. This stuff is a bit more of a pain to strip because it's very stretchy, but that came off. And again, I'm going to twist that. A lot easier to twist, a lot more fluffy, you might say. I'm just going to check the fit on one of these. Looks pretty good. Still a little long, but should be okay. Again, I'm going to set this in my crimper. Till it comes up to that back edge. And then slowly pull it shut until it clicks once. There we go. So now it's holding itself. And I will feed this cable in. Very carefully on this one, because again, this is very fuzzy and very likely to get some runaway strands. I'm kind of twisting it in there. Yeah, this one's very thick. Alright, let's see. Try it like this. Ooh, yeah, that one is really thick. This is where a 12 gauge wire might be more appropriate, but we'll keep trying. I'm really trying to get that down to a thinner point, you might say. Yeah, that may not work in there. That is very thick. All right, before I mangle this, let me see how well that fits in one of these. So that one click down might have made that a little too hard to get in there. So I'm gonna open this. There's a little lever in here. Let's see which way I click it. Open that up, pull that out. Compare it to another one, and it closed it pretty good. So I'm gonna try to do this without clicking that close. Again, I'm gonna put that in there until it's right, I don't know if you can see that, it's right up against the edge there. I'm not clicking it this time, I'm just holding it with one hand. I'm holding it with my left hand in this case. And I should now be able to set that in there. Yeah, okay. So now I set that in there, go ahead and pull it shut and crimp it all the way. There we go, and again it's stuck, so get my screwdriver. Give it a decent tap. One almost came out. Tap. I think we'll still have to flip it over and do the other side. Tap, or two, or three, and got quite bent. So hopefully that doesn't snap when we bend it back. Very carefully bend it back. I'm gonna inspect it real quick. Yeah, it looks good. There's some fuzz coming out the top. That could cause a problem trying to get it into the connector housing. So I'm going to try to snip that off. And we'll try to put it in the housing. So again, lining it up properly. Insert into the housing. pushing it in by hand. And that is just so much thicker casing, it may not be going into the housing easily. So I may need to get a screwdriver. No, I think it's going in. Yeah, so that's not going in easily. So I'm going to get a screwdriver and try to push it down in there. We do have this tool. In fact, you know what? Let me use this tool instead. So we have this tool. This is specifically for doing power pole connections. It's not always the greatest, but it did help us out quite a bit in the past. What you want to do is this casing may flip over as you're pressing down on it. So you want to hold it securely on both sides with your fingers or your hand. Be very careful with this because you're going to be putting pressure down. It's probably best to come in from the bottom side. Let's see if I can fit that. I don't think this is going to fit in there. Yeah, this is not really going to fit in there. So let me see. No, that's getting stuck in there. So let's not do that. All right, I am going to use a screwdriver. So using a very small screwdriver, doing the same thing. I'm just trying to catch an edge in there of the connector and push until I hear the click. And that didn't click. Try from the top instead. Nope, that's not going in there. So it is going in there a little bit, but not all the way. So I'm going to pull this back off. That is on there really good. There we go. Okay, let me inspect my crimp. I think those strands that are poking out are causing a problem. So I'm going to try to trim those off some more. This may just be a bad crimp. Okay. Try this one more time and we may just have to redo this crimp. Alright, that is not going in there very easily. I'm going to use something to try to grab that wire and push it down. Nope. Alright, what else do we have? Let's see. I'll go ahead and try the screwdriver again. And you see how that flipped out of my hand? That's why you need to hold it. Okay, so that is having too many problems. So I'm going to do the thing that you want to avoid, which is start all over. All right.